Libyan forces press forward against the Islamic State. Former President of Malawi, Joyce Banda, discusses what the continent can do to improve the lives of women and girls. And a viral internet trend makes it all the way to the White House. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidu. This is Africa 54. Vincent Makori has the day off. Libyan forces are pushing ahead into the last stretch of territory held by Islamic State and say they've seized a number of barricaded houses. The forces have urged civilians, especially women and children, to leave the area, promising them safe passage. Sirte has seen intense clashes in the last few months between government forces and Islamic State fighters who took full control of the city about a year ago. ISIS gained a foothold in Libya following a power struggle and security vacuum left by the downfall of Muammar Gaddafi regime in 2011. Forces loyal to Libya's new UN-backed government of national accord have been leading the battle to oust ISIS from Sirte with help from the U.S. airstrikes. International Criminal Court prosecutor Fatou Bensouda says plans by 3 African countries to pull out of the ICC will not affect her investigations into alleged war crimes. Bensouda says her office will press ahead with the initial probe in Burundi and that her work has the support of more than 120 other member states. Over the last 2 months, Gambia, South Africa and Burundi notified the United Nations that they plan to leave the ICC. They accused the court of going after African countries while ignoring what they call war crimes of Western nations. Kenya is now considering withdrawing as well. Meanwhile, Ivory Coast's President Alassane Ouattara says his country will not leave the ICC and that he does not foresee a domino effect of more countries leaving. Turning to the East African country of Uganda, where the backlog of cases in that country has infuriated human rights activists. Uganda's 1995 constitution stipulates that in no case should justice be delayed because of technicalities, but jails are overcrowded with prisoners whose court cases have not been tried for years. Now, joining me in the studio to discuss the situation is Shifra Lukwago, a Ugandan lawyer and a human rights activist. Shifra, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. Nice meeting you here too.
You know, Shifra, they say justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes.
Why the backlog of cases in Uganda? What's really going on?
There are quite a number of reasons as to why there are many problem of backlog cases in Uganda. One, it's corruption, that you find it that many judges would like to ask for bribe, just in any case they get a chance. And when you refuse, your file tends to be dragged on quite a number of years. Secondly, they have a problem of lack of funding. The judiciary is one of the institutions which is totally very underfunded. And when you look at the Ugandan budget, the judiciary gets 1% of the national budget, which is totally unfair. And you look at also what the judges and judicial officials get, it's actually very alarming. So they tend to lose morale, and this calls for a lot of corruption.
In terms of what they get in terms of salaries? Is that
in terms of salary, it's too little for a judicial officer. And also the lack of seriousness of some of the judges or judicial officers and lawyers. They continuously continue to adjourn the cases, and this affects the clients, and also it raises the cost of the litigation in form of transport and research and so on.
So, Shifra, what are you and other human rights activists doing to change this situation?
We've actually written, as Uganda Law Society, we've written to the judiciary and the Chief Justice to actually find avenues on how to deal with these lazy lawyers, these lazy judges. You find it that most of the judges come late and they leave early. And when you look at also the time of the court, it's 9 instead of 8. So you call upon also for the amendment of the Constitution. You find it that the judiciary is supposed to be independent in the Constitution, but at the same time, the Constitution still, it talks about the executive appointing the judiciary. So there is some kind of interference in the independence of the judiciary.
So you do not see any political will from the side of the government to try to find solutions and fix this backlog of cases?
They are trying, but the pace is too small. The pace is too, there need a lot to be done, because when you look at how we've been agitating for the increase in the budget, and up to now, still the situation is so alarming that they are still using the other local ancient ages of writing in court instead of typing. The staff is not enough, understaffed. And,
so what about the condition of the prisoners and the prisons? Because, sometimes you see such cases delayed for so long.
Yeah.
And some of those people, they need medical help at times.
Yeah.
And so what is the condition of some of those prisoners?
The conditions in prisons in Uganda is not so good. First of all, when you look at the toilets, most of the prisons there, you just can't even use it. They have the meal, they have it once, and that is actually not fair. Mm-hmm. And when you look at some of the cells or prisons, sincerely, you just don't feel like letting your person delay there, not until you also go there, that you can really know the situation that the prison is in.
Are we talking about hardcore criminals, or these are some of just petty,
Some are petty, some are hard, and the pretext that there is no money to bring the witnesses to testify against them. And I think this is really the work of the government, to find funds so that they can bring witnesses, because every person is presumed innocent. Until proven guilty. So if you can leave a person in the cells or in the prisons for such a long time without being tried, and then later you exonerate the person that the person is innocent, yet the person has been suffering under such situations, I think that's totally unfair.
I believe there are many looking at you as a human rights activist and as a lawyer and your team to try to bring this to fore and make changes in Uganda. Shifra, thank you very much for talking to us.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Shifra Lukwago is a Ugandan lawyer and a human rights activist. Moving on, Malawi's former president says women's leadership around the world is under siege and that more is needed to put as many women as possible in positions of power. Joyce Banda was Malawi's first female president and Africa's second. She is now a visiting fellow at the Center for Global Development in Washington. Her research focuses on women's political leadership and girls' education. She spoke to Africa 54's Hedy Adams Fitzpatrick, who asked her how Africa can pave the way to gender equality.
Most of our countries on the continent of Africa don't have the capacity to achieve equality between our boys and girls and our men and women. But the second most important thing that is coming out within my research are the traditions and culture. The harmful traditions and culture that look normal at household level, but that are affecting our girls and their progress and their attainment of education. My research is looking at the household. How is this girl child being treated? By the time she goes to school, as far as I'm concerned, she has already lost out. She has already been disadvantaged. You are a fellow African just like me. Why is it that African women grow food, harvest, store, process, cook, and then men must eat first, best, and most, while women eat last and less? Why? We need to get as many women as possible into positions of leadership. Not only are they role models, but they focus more on issues of women and children.
Is there anything you wish you had done that you weren't able to do, didn't have time to do?
Before I appointed my cabinet, I set up what I called the Presidential Initiative on Maternal Health. In 2 years, we were able to reduce maternal death from 675 per 100,000 live base to 460. The African Union gave us an award for that work. For the first time, the Solicitor General of Malawi was a woman. 2 governors of the Reserve Bank, Deputy Commissioner of the Inspector General of Police, 8 district commissioners, 100 appointments. So I have no regrets. That's what I'm trying to say. That I did my part. Because you can only provide the tools to protect the women. The rest is up to them.
Do you see a rise in the number of women presidents in future on the continent, or do you see that number dialing back or staying the same?
The number of women presidents shall rise, not only in Africa but globally. The challenge is not to get women to go to State House. The challenge is to support women get into State House, become presidents, but stay there. That's the challenge. So what you find on the continent of Africa, South Africa alone, Malawi, everywhere, are capable women that have the capacity to take any position in government, including State House. And they're just sitting there, they're not being given the opportunity.
Why?
Women's leadership is under attack. That's all I can say. Look at what happened to Julia Gillard, Thailand, Philippines. Look at what happened in Myanmar. Where do you stay under house arrest, run for election, your party wins and you're not president? Look at what happened in Zimbabwe to a vice president who everybody thought was going to take over. Now she's being accused of being a witch. So go all the way to Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and maybe end up here. So I have hope that women shall be elected to the positions. But perhaps what you and I should discuss next time is what can we do to make sure that when our fellow women get into leadership, into State House, they stay.
That was former President of Malawi, Joyce Banda. Speaking to VOA's head Adam Fitzpatrick, Ms. Banda will be live in studio with Shaka Sali on Straight Talk Africa. That interview will air at 18:30 UTC. Be sure to tune in. South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is expected to be named Wednesday as U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's choice to serve as the country's ambassador to the United Nations. The 44-year-old daughter of Indian immigrants who is serving her second term as governor has no foreign policy experience. She would be Trump's first cabinet pick who is not a white male. Haley did not support Trump during the month-long primary process that ended with him as the Republican Party's nominee. She initially backed Florida Senator Marco Rubio and later shifted her support to Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Shortly before the election, she said that she was not keen about the choices, but said she would vote for Trump. Meanwhile, Trump appears to be backing away from some of his firmly held campaign themes, including putting his Democratic presidential rival Hillary Clinton in jail. On Tuesday, Trump met with reporters and editors from the New York Times, the newspaper he condemned during the campaign as dishonest and called a failing publication. He now says he respects and reads the Times. Trump hinted that he has no intention to call for further investigations into Clinton's use of a private email server when she was Secretary of State or the Clinton Foundation. Trump said, "I don't want to hurt her. The Clintons, I really don't. She went through a lot and suffered greatly in many different ways." The campaign was vicious. Trump said investigating Clinton is not something he feels very strongly about. Speaking to reporters in the Trump Tower lobby Tuesday, former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, a Trump supporter and possible cabinet member, said the decision reflects a common aspect of American politics.
There's a tradition in American politics that after you win an election, you sort of put things behind you, and if that's the decision he reached, that's perfectly consistent with sort of a historical pattern of things come up, you say a lot of things, even some bad things might happen, and then you can sort of put it behind you in order to unite the nation.
During the campaign, Trump regularly referred to Clinton as Crooked Hillary. He stood by contentedly at rallies and listened to crowds shout, "Lock her up." He had promised to have a special prosecutor to look into her case and even directly threatened her with jail during one of the presidential debates. Trump also told the Times that clean air is vitally important, and he thinks there is some connectivity between climate change and human activity. He once called global warming a Chinese-created hoax, but he is now backing down from his threat to pull out the U.S. from the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Trump assumes power January 20th as Obama leaves office. U.S. President Barack Obama has awarded the nation's highest civilian honor for the last time, bestowing the Presidential Medal of Freedom to 21 individuals Tuesday. The recipients include philanthropists, artists, activists, scientists, and others. VOA correspondent Mary Alice Salinas has more from the White House.
President Barack Obama said the Medal of Freedom is a tribute to the idea that everyone in America can help make the country better.
Today, we celebrate extraordinary Americans who have lifted our spirits, strengthened our union, pushed us towards progress.
The recipients included big names in entertainment, sports, art, science, and philanthropy, like Microsoft's Bill and Melinda Gates. Their foundation has provided $36 billion in grants to promote health and combat poverty and hunger. Other big-name recipients, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the towering basketball legend, is also known for speaking out on social justice.
Physically, intellectually, spiritually, Kareem is one of a kind, an American who illuminates both our most basic freedoms and our highest aspirations.
Obama awarded the medal to actors like Tom Hanks, Robert De Niro, and Robert Redford, also to activists, scientists, and artists like Maya Lin. She designed Washington's Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
The Vietnam Veterans Memorial has changed the way we think about monuments, but also about how we think about sacrifice and patriotism and ourselves.
Comedian and actor Ellen DeGeneres received the medal in an emotional moment. DeGeneres made history when she and her TV character came out as a lesbian. Obama said each recipient had touched him in a personal, powerful way. And he said the group is a reminder that the country's diversity is what helps make America great. Mary Alice Salinas, VOA News, the White House.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, what doctors are doing to prevent another Ebola outbreak. Stay with us.
News and notes. This is Living Better.
When Irma Hendricks needed a kidney transplant, doctors told her to expect at least a 5-year wait. But then researchers offered her a chance at a quicker transplant if she could accept the risk of contracting hepatitis C, which doctors hoped could be cured, though they couldn't guarantee it.
The concept of getting a very good kidney with small traces of the virus and then getting treated for the virus that's curable, it just makes sense to me.
Dr. Peter Reese is with the University of Pennsylvania.
We're giving them the opportunity to have a transplant, but we're also treating them for a new infection that they didn't have.
New drugs may offer a cure for 95% of hepatitis C cases. If the groundbreaking research pans out, hundreds more kidneys from donors who have hepatitis C, and maybe hearts and lungs too, could be transplanted every year. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
All of the major averages in the U.S. hit an all-time high yesterday as the market adjusted to a new economic outlook with President-elect Trump's administration. Jill Malandrino, business correspondent in New York City, joins us to discuss the next catalyst. Hello, Jill.
Hi, good morning. So all eyes will be on the Federal Reserve December 14th as it delivers its decision to hike interest rates. At this point, traders are pricing in about a 92% chance that that will, in fact, happen.
Jill, again, break it down for us, because what exactly do central banks do, and where does all this money come from?
That's a great question, because central banks were mostly in the background prior to the financial crisis in 2008. And with the recent surge of the U.S. dollar, Fed policy will impact global currency more than ever. Governments first started establishing central banks in order to create reliable payment systems. Over time, the bank's mandate increased to managing whole financial systems and economies. Their main approach has been to adjust the cost of money by changing interest rates, at first in an effort to stimulate or slow the economy, and later more as a way of preserving stability. Most new money is actually electronic, and it's controlled in one of three ways: adjusting short-term interest rates, modifying reserve requirements, and conducting open market operations like buying government securities.
So, Jill, how is the strong dollar being received by the world markets?
Well, there are plenty of instances of companies pointing to currency issues as an explanation for low earnings earlier this year when the dollar spiked. Some of the big names that noted currency headwinds were Apple, Procter & Gamble, and Whirlpool, big international conglomerates. A strong greenback makes it more expensive for buyers in foreign countries. Africa is a great example since a lot of goods are imported. The local currency is normally used to buy U.S.-made goods that are priced in dollars, and that makes it much more expensive. That's bad for the consumer. It's bad for companies since demand decreases, and that ultimately impacts the balance sheet. This is why there's such a delicate balance between the central banks and currency valuation.
Jill, thank you very much. We'll see you Friday at the NASDAQ.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All right. That's Jill Malandrino, VOA's Africa 54 business correspondent, reporting live from New York. More than 10,000 people died during the Ebola epidemic in West Africa. VOA's Mariama Diallo looks at what's being done by health agencies to prevent the deadly virus from spinning out of control.
Now he's dissipating the body.
The 2014 Ebola outbreak in West Africa was the deadliest in history, and healthcare specialists are working to prevent the next one.
Countries might officially be declared Ebola-free, but challenges remain. And for those reasons, the work of agencies like the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention continues.
The CDC's Dr. Barb Marston.
The virus can hang around in the body of people who have survived Ebola and can then be spread to other people and start new outbreaks. In fact, there have been 7 clusters of Ebola since the epidemic was controlled, 3 in Liberia, 3 in Sierra Leone, and 1 that started in Guinea.
Countries are better prepared now, says CDC's Liberia country director, Dr. Desmond Williams.
In March, we had a case again in a remote part in Guinea, and a case, one of the contacts from that particular family moved down to the capital city of Liberia, Monrovia. But because the 2 governments were ready this time, we were able to limit that outbreak to 13 infected people and 9 people dead.
Our biggest focus in all 3 countries is on activities related to surveillance and laboratory and building human capacity. Right now we have a team of about between 50 and 60. That's counting people who are Americans that are permanently stationed in the 3 countries, plus some locally employed staff and also some from staff from the offices here at CDC that are traveling there temporarily to assist.
Although the epidemic is over, hospitals in the U.S. are not letting down their guard. Dr. Colleen Kraft is with Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, which treated 4 U.S. Ebola patients. She says today her work is all Ebola related.
Nebraska, Emory, and Bellevue all are in one group called NETEC, which is the National Ebola Training and Education Center. And essentially we are tasked with training, educating, and exercising and visiting every hospital in the United States that is preparing to take care of a patient with Ebola virus.
Affected countries and organizations around the world dedicated unprecedented resources to combat the Ebola epidemic. With preparation, surveillance, and community cooperation, they hope that when the next Ebola outbreak comes, they can contain and reduce the disease's toll. Mariama Diallo for VOA News, Atlanta.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Is this the most star-studded mannequin challenge video ever? We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In South Sudan, the UN warns of escalating ethnic violence in the nation as renewed fighting forces thousands to flee their homes in Unity State. In Liberia, the company Firestone, the U.S. rubber giant, fires hundreds of workers from a Monrovia plant who now fear for their livelihoods. In Nigeria, the Air Force says it has attacked a number of Boko Haram jihadist locations in northern Borno, killing several insurgents. In Somalia, ongoing elections are marred by concerns over vote rigging and corruption, but one presidential candidate says the Somali people haven't lost hope in a leadership change.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today, we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
And welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. A social media trend has made it all the way to the White House. Comedian and talk show host Ellen DeGeneres pulled off a star-studded mannequin challenge video after the Presidential Medal of Freedom ceremony. Other celebrities taking part included Bruce Springsteen, singer Diana Ross, Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, former basketball champions Michael Jordan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The medal is awarded to people who have made outstanding contributions to the security of national interests of the United States. This isn't the first time Ellen has broken the internet. Her Oscars selfie in 2014 became the most retweeted tweet ever. Next up, analysts say shoppers in the U.S. will spend more money this holiday season than in 2015. The National Retail Federation credits steady job and income gains, consumer confidence and greater use of credit this year to people's willingness to spend more money. The year-end shopping season, which spans November and December, is crucial for many retailers. These 2 months can account for anywhere from 20 to 40% of their annual sales. The big sales kick off earlier every year. Walmart announced it will offer Cyber Monday deals starting on Black Friday, the day after the American Thanksgiving holiday that marks the traditional start of the holiday shopping season. Walmart joins a growing list of U.S. retailers who offer web promotions over the Thanksgiving weekend. And finally, the Archbishop of St. Andrews and Edinburgh has launched a new app at the Vatican. Catholics who can now find the nearest Catholic church with just a few taps on their smartphones. It's called the Catholic app. The faithful will now be able to find a place of worship anywhere in the world. Developed in cooperation with a Scottish technology company, the GPS-powered app directs users to the nearest Holy Mass or place of confession. And that's what's trending today. Good night from Washington.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words. Here is a word that has to do with art and sometimes history too.
Museum.
National Gallery of Art Associate Curator Charles Brock says another goal is to encourage people to visit museums.
Museums, of course, are dedicated to preserving culture for future generations, and so we have to make sure that those future generations are interested.
A museum is a building where interesting and beautiful things are kept. The objects are put out for the public to see. Museums can be about art, culture, or history. They can be privately owned or operated by a government.
Now, the next time you hear the word museums, you will know what this news word means.